Hi guys, Disadvantage Journey here. Today we're going to be covering another super important topic, and we're not going to be going into huge details, but what we are going to be doing is basically listing the main areas of costs in van life and giving you some detailed line items of those costs in each of those areas. Some of them do need a lot more explanation, but those would be individual videos that give a lot more detail that is required. So if you do have questions on that, please let us know in the feedback so that we can prioritize what information is more useful to you that would help you quickly, because we can put that further up in the list than the others. This is a super important topic. It really is the difference between success and failure, doing some financial management. So this is one of the baby steps of that, knowing what expenses are and actually figuring out what they would be for you in your dream life. So we will be doing other videos that all connect all of this information together. This is just one of the first ones. So if you like it, please give it a thumbs up. Again, that feedback is super important. We are doing this video because of a few requests on this subject, and also just seeing so many people asking how much van life costs. Also, if you haven't subscribed to our channel yet, please subscribe and don't forget to click that little bell. Okay, so the very first area is the vehicle or unit itself. And we're going to talk about whether it is that you purchase it. And if you purchase it, then you have a set amount already put aside that you can't go over. And that's a one-time cost. So it's not a reoccurring expense. You can be renting it, and that would be a monthly expense or whatever the term is. And the third one would be buying or getting a loan on a new or used RV from a dealership. Now these can actually be 15 to 20 years in length, so they're much more like mortgages than they ever have been before. Now along with these, if you purchase from a dealership, you also might need to purchase extended warranty for like the vehicle and or the appliances, and also maintenance for the vehicle might be a good idea. It just depends on how much they're going to be charging, and that's something you actually need to sit down and do math with. So if you are purchasing a vehicle by loan, you might have bi-monthly or bi-weekly or monthly payments, and those are very important to know how often you're going to be getting money and when it makes the most sense for those payments to occur while you're on the road. The next area is insurance on the vehicle. So a loan actually might require extra insurance. So it might require you to have job loss, critical illness, or life insurance. Then there's also vehicle insurance. So vehicle insurance, there could be regular insurance, motorhome insurance, which or a declared value insurance. There could also be content insurance, the value to cover all your belongings. I mean, it can really add up, all your appliances, all of your clothing, everything, especially if that's your home. And if you are a homeowner and you're actually renting out your home or something, you may actually just be able to add a rider onto the unit that you are going for all of those belongings. So these are all things you definitely need to have to look into and find out what your insurance brokers provide. And we will be doing another detailed video because insurance is like super important. Okay, so the next area in regards to the vehicle happens to be maintenance. So the more you drive, the more maintenance you will have to do. So an oil change in newer vehicles can be every 3 months to 5,000 or 6,000 kilometers. You need to always check your owner's manual and follow that. But if you put on 30,000 kilometers, you'll need to do 6 oil changes. Every 3 months would only mean 4 oil changes. So you can actually cause damage to your unit if you're not following and paying attention to your kilometers and doing the oil changes when they need to be done, as an example. So it's also really important to refer to that owner's manual because it'll also let you know how often you need to be doing tune-ups, transmission services. If you have a GDI engine, those actually need a service to clean the debris every so often. AC service, if you're going to be traveling in the desert for months, maybe you might need to service your AC and how much that costs, how long your battery's going to last, how long you've had it, that type of thing. Now also don't forget about tire rotations and replacements. Those need to be done regularly as well. More kilometers, you might want to rotate more often. And then there's also things like alignment when you're doing those. So budget accordingly for all of those things. As vehicles get older, so you pay cash for an older vehicle, more things will need to be serviced or replaced. And that's actually maintenance. That's not having a lemon of a vehicle. It's actually maintenance. They only last for so long. So you're paying a lot less for a vehicle. You need to expect to pay more money to change some of those things that get worn as time goes on. Just that simple. So the shocks or the radiator or working on the exhaust system as examples. And also don't forget, some gas stations actually charge to put air in your tires and things like that. So have a small budget for however many times you do it, just in case you have to pay for those things as well. Energy costs is also the next area. So for your power, your cooking, your heat. So basically this is the same as having an electricity or gas bill inside a house. Solar, you can go the route of solar. That's a large initial investment. They don't last forever, so you might need to change up your inverters, charge controllers, replace batteries, and you kind of get a little addicted when you have solar. Many people like to keep upgrading, whether it be the panel or the other parts of the system itself. Some people have generators, so fuel and fuel treatment for a generator are very, very important. Oil, spark plugs as well. So you need to consider all those costs, how much you're going to use your generator, how much extra gas you're going to go through, how many spark plugs you're going to need, and put that accordingly into your budget. So there's also fuel costs. Basically, you need to estimate your consumptions of all of these things. So whether your vehicle is gas, we all should know how many miles we get to the gallon or liters to the kilometer, and budget accordingly for how far we're going to drive. Now, don't forget, if you're a city van dweller, you are still moving your vehicle at least every third day. So at least 10 times a month, you are moving that vehicle. So how much fuel are you going to plan to spend, or at least budget, so that you're not caught off guard by having to buy extra fuel every month. Diesel, we actually have diesel as well as gas for our diesel heater. So what is your consumption? How much do you use, and how much per liter or gallon is the cost of it? Propane is used by many, many van dwellers. So basically we have it for our stove, but it can also be for like a three-way fridge, and a three-way fridge can consume up to 1 pound a day in hot weather. So you need to be aware of that and budget accordingly how much it's going to cost you. So this is no different than budgeting for electricity and possibly a gas bill or diesel bill or oil bill in your house. And if you are plugged into RV parks, and if you're staying temporarily, it's usually included, but if you're staying long-term, like month to month, they usually charge you by kilowatts of power consumed. So that's a very important question, and you need to know that information when you're planning on staying at parks. So a park might be a lot cheaper, but if you're going to have to be paying extra for your electricity consumption, you want to know that they're not charging you double what the other park would be, and it's actually cheaper to go to the better park. So those are things that you actually need to really be cognizant of. So a little bit more information about RV parks. So they usually have daily, weekly, and monthly rates. They also may be a lot more busy in the busy season or during holidays, and you may have to actually stay there extra days during long weekends and things like that. So make sure you're aware of all of those details. You also might have extra tasks added to you if you are paying the lower cost. So if you're month to month during the summer months, they might have a requirement that you have to cut your lawn on the pad that you have. So just details like that. Or they can actually charge you an extra fee. So just make sure you know those details, because we've seen it. Some facilities also might not be included when you're paying a month-to-month fee. So like if they have a pool or mini golf or things like that, they might be extra costs if you're paying the lower monthly rate. So just make sure you ask all those questions if you are planning on living in RV parks and traveling that way. Okay, so you might need to pay for water and or dumping your tanks if you have those. Now there's still many free places, and but more and more are actually starting to charge for those services now. Basically, you might actually even find many of them during summer months or seasonal rates, depending on where you are traveling, that public parks and cities might actually even have these facilities. So always check those first, because they're usually free ones or much cheaper ones than parks or anywhere like that. You also need to consider the cost of chemicals. So if you know that you're dumping your black tank every 3 days, and that one bottle, a $9 bottle, will give you 3 different changes. So like you need to be aware of all of those things and actually do the math and figure out how much that chemical is going to cost you over the month, so you can budget accordingly for it. And also you also need to replace the hoses and connectors occasionally, because they do start to crack and leak and all kinds of other things. So another huge thing is we need to be washing our unit. So like paying for a car wash. And those are usually coin operated, and you need to know how long it takes you to do the unit and actually budget for that. So if it's $6 or $8 and you do it every month, so you need to budget accordingly for that, because all of these little tiny costs all add up. So they all need to be put on your budget, so you need to be aware of the cost of each of them. So I really urge you to see how much it's going to cost you individually, to write that on your budget when we actually get to that point. If you have a rubberized roof, you might need to use conditioner on it every year. So how much is that bottle of conditioner? Or how long will that conditioner last you? So if it be 2 years, you know exactly how much it's going to cost you. There's also black streak remover. So you go through a bottle of that every year. So like I'm saying, all of these little tiny things, they all add up, and they can actually stop you from enjoying your van life unless you've budgeted accordingly for them and you are aware that they're actually coming up. And there's also like vinyl cleaner for the awning and the slide covers as well. So just some ideas. There are more things, but I'm putting these ones out there because they're the most commonly used things. Okay, I'm going to speak really quickly about this one. It's about food and nourishment. So basically, there should be no difference when you move into the van as you living in a house, if you're living in a house right now. So basically, whatever you're paying for food should just translate over. Many people, however, have not ever looked at what their food costs are. And they might be a tiny bit higher in some ways, just because you're buying smaller portions and those usually cost more. But you're also using up your food quicker, so you have less waste. So it's a little 50-50 if there's actually any difference there or not. But basically, so you need to know your costs for like preparing food. Your staples like oil and vinegar, seasonings, spices, sauces, condiments that you use regularly, coffee, sugar, if you're using that on a daily basis, prepackaged stuff like side dishes or gravies and sauces, salad dressings, snacks, fruits, crackers, dips, like those types of things. You need to also include a budget for eating out. And by doing this and looking at these costs, you really will see that to be successful in this lifestyle, you really need to go out a lot less and cook a lot more in your van. It's super, super important to have a really good van life. Supplements, many people are taking supplements, whether it be vitamins and minerals, other health products, or even if you're buying organic, you need to make sure that you're budgeting for that extra cost for all of your items, so that organic can actually run even up to 25% more for you for product. So just be aware of those things. And also you might need to be, or many people do anyway, purchase potable water. So Whether or not you can fill up for free, you can also fill up a few water jugs if you're carrying those, or many people are buying bottled water as they travel. So include all of that. Now just remember that things also might not last as long in a van, so it is much better, even though it might seem cheaper to buy the larger bottle of things, they don't last as long. So really watch that video, safety of consumables in a van, because it really does make a big difference, and it's super important. Now also you need to be very aware of any habits or pastimes that you have, which are food related, because we're talking about food. So that could be things like farmers markets that you like to stop at. Actually, some people even plan their trips to hit farmers markets. If you like to stop and visit orchards or vineyards as you're going, wineries, breweries, cideries, spirit makers that are along the path. If that's your thing, cafes or tea houses, bakeries, and also there's food truck festivals all over North America, unfortunately. I'm not quite sure if they're in Europe yet. So if you're from Europe and you're watching this, please let us know. Do you guys have big food truck festivals over there as well? So the next area is healthcare, and we're definitely going to cover this one in much greater detail than I am here right now. So basically, you're probably going to need to pay for medical coverage in some form. Now you might need extended medical, or you might need to have a rider on your medical insurance if you're going out of country, as an example, so that you still have coverage. Now also remember that your deductibles should be budgeted into your budget. Lots of people forget the new year comes around and they have $100 or $200 deductible, and they weren't counting on spending that money when they refilled their prescriptions. So just keep those things in mind. So prescriptions, OTCs, so things like Tylenol or Advil, digestive aids if you have eczema issues. If you always buy a calamine bottle because you know you're going to be in areas with mosquitoes, or you have sensitive skin, and definitely remember the sunblock and how much that costs and how much you go through. Then there's also things like natural products. So that, again, could be your vitamins and minerals and things like that. Healthcare products or medical supplies, which could also mean like vision or hearing care. It could be compression stockings, braces for your ankle, knee, back, or you have carpal tunnel for your arm. There also could be medical device maintenance. So if you have a CPAP machine, mask and tubing, how much do those cost? How often do you need to replace them? Oxygen and equipment, similar scenario. Batteries for hearing aids, how much do those cost? How often do you need to replace those? And you also might have financing on either your glasses or your hearing aids, because they are higher cost items. So just don't forget to put those things in your budget. It's really important. Another thing is you might be using orthotics. So how often do those last if you're going to be walking a lot longer or further as you're traveling than what you normally have been? Also think that you're going to need to replace those more often. So keep those costs in mind. Now with vision, you could also have not just your glasses, but you could have sunglasses, especially for driving. They're super important, so you're not squinting all the time and creating headaches and needing more Advil. You might have contacts, but also the solutions and the care for them, conditioners. Some people use Epsom salts quite often, especially if you're doing sports on the road. That doesn't mean that you're not going to have sports pain, or you work out really hard, too hard on one day, and you want to go and have like a little Epsom salt. So you can have Epsom salts and be sitting in there with your feet in a nice hot foot soak bath or whatever it might be. And some people also travel with a TENS machine. So just keep all of those things in mind. Now another area is oral health care. So you might still want to be doing your 2 cleanings a year at dentists. So you can plan and budget for those. Your dentist might actually know somebody as you're planning a trip, so they could send you records and you can get care from another dentist in another area. So always ask. Those are important things to always ask, whether it be your doctor or dentist or other healthcare professional. Tell them where you're going, tell them what you're doing, so that you know that you're safe to go, number one, like we've talked about in other videos. But number two, they might know somebody so that you can actually get continuity of care, and they're going to be much more likely to quickly release records and send information about you to that other healthcare professional, especially if they know them. So it's not hard to ask, just ask, let people know, be excited, and they'll be excited with you and want to help you. So just never forget about those little details. I didn't plan to say that, but it just occurred to me, and it's really important. You also might use other practitioners as well as part of your healthcare. So that could be massage therapists, chiropractors, acupuncture, physiotherapy, a herbalist or holistic medicine, traditional Chinese medicine, or sports medicine. A lot of them might not be fully covered, so as long as you know what your coverages are, it's super important, and you can just maintain the same level as what you have in your sticks and bricks house out on the road. It's not hard to find registered massage therapists as an example, or chiropractors as you go. And again, don't forget to let your professional here know, and they might have a buddy along the path. So here's something many people might actually not even think about. You might require vaccinations. So if you're taking a plane and you're doing it through a travel agent or something, they will let you know most likely, or they'll give you a printout that you should go possibly see a doctor about vaccinations for the area that you're going. But if you're driving, you might not actually think about that. So always make sure you go and see a pharmacist or a travel doctor before you go, or if you decide along the road to go, find somebody in your area so that you can go and find out if there's any vaccinations that you would need for where you're going. Malaria as one I can possibly think of just off the top of my head. Now also, you might want to be traveling with some emergency meds, just depending on where you go and whether or not you're used to the type of temperature and things like that as you're traveling. So you might need antidiarrheals. Now, it's really easy to drink water that your body's not used to and start having stomach problems, even if you just use that water to brush your teeth or something. So always carry antidiarrheals. Motion sickness, even if you've never had it before, you might just be not feeling well and have it that day, but you have those on hand, and gravel are inexpensive. Anti-allergy meds are super important to always take with you, because you never know we're going to brush up against something you weren't aware you would react to. So always keep those with you as part of your emergency health kit. Also, parasite or deworming agents are really important, especially when you've been drinking questionable water on occasion on your trip. Another thing you might not think about is if you actually go up to Alaska or Yukon or Northwest Territories. If you're going up there in full summer, it's 24-hour sun. It never sets. So you know that you don't do very well without sleep, and you know that you really need darkness to go to sleep. Make sure you buy an appropriate and really good mask so that you're going to get the sleep that you actually need. And the same for ear protection as well. Our next area is memberships or subscriptions. So one of the ones we like to use is CAA, so the Automobile Association. So emergency roadside assistance. Now this can come in many forms. This can come through your insurance agent. There's all kinds of options out there. CAA is just a very popular one, but I'm sure you can check into ones in your area and see if that's the best value for you. They usually provide you with like vehicle tows. Some of them can provide you from a motel and even a food allowance in case of a breakdown. So you can't sleep in your van. Where are you going to sleep? And you don't have a bunch of extra money necessarily. You're probably going to need it to pay, but then you get reimbursed for the money. So just keep that in mind. That's part of your emergency fund, to pay first and then have it reimbursed, but then you have your emergency fund again as soon as it is. Also, they'll usually offer Jumpstart, and many times they'll actually even bring you fuel just in case you ran out somewhere because you didn't see that sign that said next gas station 120 miles away. Check your fuel, which is quite funny. We've seen that happen many times. There's also, oh, and also if you lock your keys in your car, sorry, I almost forgot this one. If you lock your keys in your car, lots of times they'll come and open the door for you so that you can retrieve those keys because you don't want to cause any damage to your vehicle. The next big one is gym memberships. Now, we don't have one, so I can't give you any recommendations, so please don't ask. I have no clue, but they are getting to be more and more popular. So they help you stay fit on the road, and I mean, exercise is super important. If you're not getting it because you're walking around and hiking and looking at all of the nature around you, then you're going to get it in the gym, and that's fantastic. I absolutely love that. But many people also use it for shower facilities. So if you're using it for both, that's absolutely fantastic. If it's just the shower, well, that's fantastic too. You're taking care of your personal hygiene. But again, I don't know a lot of details, so I'll leave this one to the other experts. So another thing we've talked about is fueling your passions, taking the things that you love the most in your sticks and bricks life and bringing it with you on the road. So if that's the scenario for you, and I've just listed a few different areas that you might need to think about, because you might be needing to continue with memberships in the areas if you're involved in these things. So if you're in rugby league or sailboating, scuba diving, if you have a Nowie or PADI, you might need to pay yearly renewals on those. Cycling or triathlon. Many people also do golfing tourism and traveling, or mountain climbing is another really big one. So all of those things might have a membership cost that you're involved in that allow you to play or go to events or take part in other things, and actually boost up some of your insurance just in case you get injured doing those things on the road. So keep that in mind too before you let those memberships lapse. If you're going to be doing them anyway on the road, you might want to still pay a little bit extra because you're extra covered and insured. Another biggie that we're absolutely going to have to do another whole video: cell phone. Review it before you travel if that's possible. That can be a monthly fee. It could be pay as you go, and many people actually control themselves that way if you can't control shutting off your data when you get near your limit. And they may or may not include data, so always keep that in mind. Then there's also things like satellite TV and even data packages that you might not have with your phone. And some people even pay a monthly fee for a satellite phone, although it's very expensive. But if you're always in rural areas, that might be the way to go for safety. We particularly don't pay for TV or satellite TV. We use a free HD antenna, and that is something that definitely is another subject as well. Now, don't forget about the things that you can't live without, and some people can't live without things like Netflix or other apps for streaming. So make sure that you put those into your budget. They're a small fee, but I mean, they are something that needs to go in your budget. Now also, you might have professional dues or fees yearly if you're in like certain professions that require that. So if you're a member of the press and you can actually earn money on route by doing freelance work and stuff like that, you're going to need to keep up that press professional due or fee, whatever it may be. Same thing with nurses. There's lots of nurses that travel. There's bar for lawyers. So you might do some pro bono work, and you might travel the country and be a specialist in a certain area. Those are things that you're going to need to pay for and think about. Or even if you're like a pilot, you need to pay yearly for your pilot's license. So all of those details you need to remember and know how much they cost. If you belong to clubs, you might need to pay for that. Or some of your hobbies might require licensing fees. So for example, drone operation, I now believe, has a licensing fee. Or hunting and fishing. Lots of people love to hunt and fish. That's the part of the whole experience. So make sure that you include those fees for those activities in your budget. And sailing. Also, again, pilot license or scuba diving are also part of that. So all of those things require that. So think about what your activities are and think if there's any costs associated with that, is basically what it boils down to. Now, no judgment, or I'll try my best not to judge, but some people actually don't know if this is the life for them. And if you're still contemplating that, many people do not want to get rid of all of their stuff permanently. So if you're in that scenario or whatever, you might need to pay for storage for your belongings. So need to know what the monthly storage fee is. And also when you find that out, ask them how much it typically goes up every year so that you can be aware of that and budget accordingly for a longer period of time. So another reason we want to really get into this whole budget thing is that lots of people have debt. So we want to think about debt reduction. And one of the things that we need to know first is your debt repayments. So you might have things like student loans or credit cards, your vehicle loan payment. Yeah, I mean, some people travel with a second vehicle and pull it along with them. You might have personal loans or friends or family that you need to repay. There's a multitude of sources for debt people might have. So just think about things that you really do owe and have to pay, even if there's no timeline, so that when you're talking about getting really financially healthy, we can figure out how to pay for all of those things and budget them in there so that you can live your best life. So beauty and personal. Now, if you get your hair cut every 6 weeks, you need to be aware of that. How much does the hairdresser cost on a typical thing? And you can actually even Google some of these things and ask what the average cost is of certain services in different states or provinces as you go, and just use that as a guideline. You could have facials a couple times a year, waxing in the spring and summer months, or even a pedicure for summer. So if these are things that you normally do, don't deprive yourself of these things, because that could be a reason itself to cause contention or cause you to not want to live van life because you're not taking the best care of yourself. Well, you can still do all of those things and live in your van. You just need to budget for them. And so it's really important to think of the things that you really enjoy and really don't want to give up, because most of the time you don't have to give up those things. So just keep that in mind. It could also be that you have a major event coming up and you want to get your makeup done for your friend's wedding, and it's going to cost this amount of money. So budget for those things. So gifts are kind of along that lines as well. So who do you give gifts to every year? Are there any upcoming big milestones this year? So a new baby, a graduation, or a 50th anniversary of your parents, or something like that. And also in the same thing, don't forget fund money, because that's a gift for yourselves. It's really super important just to have an extra little bit of splurge money and budget for that. Now, we all have a different idea of what we want out of this life, and we all definitely have some must-dos and must-sees. And knowing the cost is essential for these things so that you don't struggle and you don't stress out while you're trying to live this peaceful, wonderful life. So if you know that you're going to be going to the Pacific Coast and your whole life dream was to go whale watching, how much does that cost? Plan ahead for it. Do you need to book it ahead of time? Whatever it is, but make sure you know those costs. You might want to do fossil hunting when you hit the prairies, or gold panning and touring a mine if that's your thing. Visiting iconic places and going on certain tours. There's also things like a must-see, like the Grand Canyon and going down on muleback or something. Like, those are things you really need to think about. It could be a helicopter tour or boat tour of a certain area. It could be going to the Grand Ole Opry, or actually snorkeling in a coral reef. So just think about those things that are really on your bucket list and know how much they cost ahead of time. And now's a good time to look into those things. Some people also love music concerts, and we have so many of them everywhere on the planet. So if music concerts are your thing, be aware, and again, plan accordingly for those. It also could be things like gondolas or cave excursions or bungee jumping, things that you wouldn't otherwise do, but those are all on your bucket list. There also could be additional costs to travel. So many places have toll highways, so it actually might be cheaper to purchase a ticket. So if you're planning ahead, you could be purchasing that ahead of time at a cheaper cost. So just knowing that there's a toll highway there, or avoiding the toll highway, but it's hard to do that if you haven't looked at it ahead of time and planned for it. There's also ferries or toll bridges that also sometimes cost money. Oversized vehicles can even be a higher cost. So know your vehicle size and always check into that. So if you're kind of borderline sometimes, then you know that you should always check and see what their consideration of an oversized vehicle is like for ferries as an example. And also parking for short or long term could be a cost that you might need to think about as well. So there's also a wish list that we all kind of carry around, future planned purchases. So it could, for us, it was a heater for a while. We've got that. We don't need to worry about it anymore, but we do want to upgrade how much wattage of solar panel we have. So we're going to be doing that very soon. But always think about your future planned purchases, save up the money, and then buy it. Don't buy it on credit. It's going to cost you more money in the end. Another thing is legal fees or child care or child support or alimony. So some of you have those things. You need to know what's expected of you and budget and plan for those things and put them in your budget. So write those on your expenses as well. So that's all we have. It's not a completely 100% complete list by any means. Like I said, we all have different things in our lives. So hopefully this will rattle some brain cells, get some memory jogging, and you'll be able to put all of the things that you have expenses all on a single piece of paper or on several pieces of paper if that's what you need, and we'll be able to use these for our budgeting purposes and videos that are coming up shortly. Again, really super hope you like this video.